Hey, so I thought I would do a video today about Mercury square Saturn in the natal chart. So Mercury is all about our um, communicative processes and how we take in information, how we share information, all about information, communication, that kind of thing. And Saturn is a planet that wants to give structure and stability, and at times it needs to give limits in order for something to function properly. So Saturn is sometimes something that we're kind of not all that comfortable with. We might be scared of it. We might be intimidated by it because we don't want to be kind of boxed into a structure. Sometimes we don't want to have the experience of being kind of told what to do, or have something taken away from us, or have something um, kind of placed upon us. But sometimes that's what Saturn does in order for us to really grow and we need some kind of discipline, and that's what Saturn is about. But with that can come, especially with the square, can come limitations, because the square is seen as like a difficult aspect, I guess, and it's to do with the tension. There's a tension between the two energies of the planets. So when you have Mercury square Saturn, and I have this myself, so I kind of know about it firsthand, I guess. It basically means that there's a tension between your thinking style and your communication style, and the kind of the limitations placed upon that by Saturn within the square. So, for example, the person might have there's some kind of issue with communication or thinking. So um, the person might have difficulty expressing themselves in everyday context and day-to-day life, in terms of really placing what's in their mind out there in a way that is fluid. Because Saturn isn't, I don't look at Saturn as a fluid planet. Saturn is kind of something that gives structure and limits, and it's a kind of hard mm, it's a kind of a hard energy. So when you have Mercury square Saturn, there can be difficulties with communication, and the thinking style can be quite it can be quite depressive at times, because of this Saturnian energy that's placed upon um, your thinking style and your thinking habits, which is represented by Mercury. So it's almost like there's some kind of a challenge. It's you have this challenge that you need to try to think more positively, and like try to express yourself more clearly in order to be understood better. There's like a disconnect between, or like a tension between, what you want to say and how you actually express that in life. And so definitely a tension between communication style, thinking style, and limits and structure. So, these people, they may be quite, in some cases, they may be quite, depending on other aspects, they may be quite sort of uh, slow to take on new ways of thinking and new habits, new everyday habits. They may be kind of stuck in a routine, because Saturn is placing this routine energy and this kind of structure on the habits of the everyday, which is kind of represented by Mercury. So the thinking and the way we go about thinking about our everyday lives, it can be quite structured, and it may be kind of limited. It's not like Jupiter, um, which expands and kind of you want to take in more and more information, whereas Saturn is kind of like it's a sobering influence. So it's going to make the person a little bit more um, sober, and kind of slightly limited and bit slower to take on new information. It's more like Saturn is kind of the energy that wants to build up something and kind of maintain and build up, rather than to expand and like try new experiences and things like this. So there, Saturn does put puts this energy of control and limits and structure and rigidity at times, and kind of things like that onto your everyday communication and your thinking style. So you maybe, it can be it can indicate someone who tends to be a bit pessimistic, kind of slow to take on new information. Maybe they may be a slow talker, even they may be, because they're trying to really make sure that what they're saying is kind of appropriate or structured well. So unless it depends on other aspects, but it's just looking at this aspect by itself, it is the kind of aspect that would make someone kind of slow to open up and slow to express themselves in a way that is like, they're not going to be talking all the time. They're going to be making sure that what they say is kind of relevant or like structured well, I guess, in some sense. And so their thinking can be like that as well. They're just looking at this aspect on its own. This aspect itself indicates that the person will be kind of slow to communicate and slow to think about new things, and they're more about placing kind of some kind of structure on their communication and their thinking. So there may be trouble, while they can be very serious and sober kind of communicators, kind of able to really express what needs to be expressed, what's important in a situation. They're kind of able to express that. But the other side of that, with the Saturn squaring Mercury, is that it can be limited. The person may have trouble really expressing themselves. They may be too slow to react, maybe, or too slow to really express something that they're thinking, or it might come out in kind of like an awkward way, or there's because it's structured. It's also limited. It's not an aspect that kind of opens you up to a lot of different possibilities mentally and intellectually, and the way you communicate. It's more of sobering, structured kind of influence that can give limits at times in your communication style and in your thinking style. So you can be depressive, you can be thinking about rules and regulations, and you can kind of take it too far because of the square, because the square is a negative aspect in a sense, or it's showing you that there's some kind of challenge that you have to work through. And so the challenge with this kind of is that you have to find a way to just kind of almost like chill out mentally and in your communication style, and not be so rigid and kind of not be so prepared for everything in the way that you communicate and think about things. And that sometimes it's important to just kind of relax into it and allow new thoughts and new experiences and new ways of communication and new ways of thinking into your life, and not be so kind of rigid and structured in the way that you think and communicate. Now, like I said, it does depend on other aspects, but this aspect on its own is pretty much represents this kind of issue that we're facing in our lives and in ourselves. So thank you for watching, and I'll leave it at that. So bye.